Now back to the show. This is The Law Show on CL 650.
We're talking immigration law with our guests Gordon Maynard and Alex Stojcevic from Maynard Kisher Stojcevic, immigration and citizenship lawyers in Vancouver. And Gordon, I guess you've saved the worst for last in terms of just raw, rather shocking numbers. We're talking about family class sponsored applications to come into Canada. We've talked about spousal class, and now we're moving on to the parents of Canadian citizens or Canadian citizens and permanent residents. Are they both, or is it just parents of Canadian citizens?
No, Canadian citizens or permanent residents.
Or okay. So a processing number can take anywhere from coming from inside Canada in the spousal category for roughly a year and a half. You're saying that applying from abroad can take on average 2 to 3 years. This is the spousal class. Now when we move to parent class applications, how do the numbers look?
First of all, you got to get your application into the stream, and that's no easy task because the government puts a cap on the number of parental applications that it'll take. It says 5,000 a year they'll process. So at the beginning of the year, in January, they'll open up the category.
Right.
And everybody throws their applications in as fast as they can.
Sure.
That category will be closed very quickly, because they'll have the 5,000 numbers identified.
So do the people left over, are they forming the line for next year's 5,000?
Or are they just ball game next year?
Really?
Just
their applications are returned.
Oh, okay. So if you're
that's the current system.
I would assume 5,000 applications, given our size and population, going to take a few days to fill that up, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll find out, but it takes them time to actually open every envelope and file it and get that number there. Ultimately, you'll get a message saying, sorry, your application gets returned because we met our quota.
Okay. All right.
So there's that. Now, if you're lucky enough to have your application accepted to commence the process,
to be in the lucky 5,000,
the first step is to assess the sponsorship application.
Okay.
All right. We said that for inside Canada, for overseas applications of sponsoring your spouse, that the sponsorship application took 61 days, about 2 months.
Okay.
For sponsors under parent class, it's taking 47 months. That's the current process.
That's 4 years.
Yeah, that's what they're saying on the website.
That's for stage 1 approval.
Yeah, that's just approval of the sponsorship application. They don't want to approve these applications quickly because they've already got a backlog that's been building up over the past 10, 15 years. So they don't want to add to it. All right, so they're saying 4 years. What's the reality? 2 years anyways,
And this is coming from inside Canada.
This is just the sponsors part of the application.
Right.
These are the Canadian citizens or permanent residents who got their application in, and they're waiting for that initial assessment of just the sponsorship side of the application. Are you a Canadian citizen? Are you residing in Canada? Do you have to?
Do you qualify even to sponsor someone to come into the country? Right. Okay.
Exactly.
So that's going to take up to 4 years.
Correct.
Wow.
Then you get a letter that says, okay, now we're starting your parents' application. Now, keep in mind, you sent the forms in 2-4 years earlier.
Sure.
Now they say, please send in new forms, please send in this, please send in that. All right. That overseas process depends on what office you get into overseas. Depends where your parents live. And the processing time, we looked earlier at the CIC website, which showed processing time for parental applications worldwide.
Mm-hmm.
And the processing time ranged anywhere from 20 to 78 months. 20 to 78 months. So overall here, you're looking at processing times. If you get your application in, between the sponsor side of it and the parental side of it, you're looking at 6 to 10 years, according to the published figures on the website.
Well, Alex, there's a bit of a risk involved with being in this process. Some of these people who are attempting to be brought into Canada by their family are A, old, and B, in some cases, rather frail.
Yeah, there's many instances where people have died, unfortunately, before they've been able to be sponsored, or who have developed medical conditions that then make them medically inadmissible. So those are significant challenges with these long processing times. The other issues that arise is people who sponsor their parents, they have to do something with them. I mean, this is being driven by necessity a lot of the time, and folks wait patiently for a long time for their parents to come, and then they run into an obstacle that's largely a creation of the processing. I should backtrack a little bit. It wasn't always like this. Back in the earlier part of the last decade, between 2000 and 2005, Average processing times were consistently 24 months or less for the whole process.
Oh, okay.
It is only since about 2004, 2005 that you see these grossly inflated
48,
numbers.
62,
Yeah.
and so on.
And
right.
again, it's a largely decision that has been made to not process people any more quickly. This target and quota system was brought in by the conservative government to basically manage an inventory where you had 20 or 30,000 applications a year, but they were only issuing 12,000 visas. You do that for 6 or 8 years, you build up a 100,000 case backlog, which is about 8 years worth of inventory. The government has tried to manage this by creating a target that is limited, and the hope from a policy perspective is that they will be able to catch up at some point because they're limiting intake. They're not taking 20,000 a year, they're taking 5.
5, yeah, exactly.
And as a result, they'll be able to process those 5
Plus others.
plus others, I guess, more quickly.
So what sort of legal advice do you give when someone calls you up just out of the blue, and I'm sure they do routinely, and say, look, I'm thinking about bringing Mom over from the old country?
Well, you have to look through every aspect of the case. You have to look at their financials. You have to look at health issues.
Yes.
You have to look at their longer-term health issues. You have to look at risk factors. You have to look at, like, for example, I mean, I ask my clients, you know, do your parents smoke? Is there underlying issues with hypertension? I mean, anything that could later become a big issue,
Right.
I mean, we need to deal with right away. In addition to that, the government brought in, much like they did with work permits, they brought in a stopgap measure. It's called the super visa. This is an ability for your parents to have a multiple entry visa to come in for 1 or 2 years at a time to visit.
Okay.
And Gordon can elaborate on that a
And
little bit.
we've only got about a minute left, but this sounds important enough to take that minute and tell us about it, Gordon. How long are they allowed to visit for during that one visit per year?
Well, the visa is long-term visa,
Right.
and they would tolerate a visit of up to 2 years at a time.
Oh,
So it's a long-term visitor situation.
okay.
And you have to have medical coverage. So perhaps the use of a visitor visa with medical coverage is an alternative to bringing over your parents as permanent residents. It's certainly faster. So the government's trying to balance off this long delay in processing by giving an alternative that might be functional for some families.
And the only
challenge, though, I have to sorry to interrupt you, Sterling. The real challenge, though, is that you need to have $100,000 in insurance as the minimum to qualify for that super visa program. People that have underlying conditions can get $100,000 in insurance, but it won't cover any of their pre-existing conditions,
Right.
which creates a very risky situation for anyone bringing in parents as long-term visitors, because if the insurer won't cover, you're out of pocket. The family that's here will probably have to go out of pocket to cover any medical expenses in Canada.
Right. All the more reason, friends, when these circumstances arise in your life, even contemplating any of these family class maneuvers from abroad for bringing people into Canada, you need to talk to a lawyer. It becomes more and more obvious as we go through these conversations how critical the assistance of a lawyer can be and is in these circumstances. Gordon, the final word to you, sir.
As an example, I always enjoy congratulating my clients when they get their permanent resident status. It's always a good day when they come to the office and pick up the documentation and they've been successful. But I tell them then, you know, if you're ever thinking about bringing your parents, start early. Don't start late.
That's right. Okay. Maynard Kisher Stoicevich online, by the way, friends, at vancouverlaw.ca. Alex and Gordon, wonderful to see you again. Can't wait till the next time.
Thank you.
See you next time right here on The Law Show on CIL 650.